shaky start to the Crowcast this week. Sorry, everyone that's been waiting. I'll hand you over to Peter, who's far more professional than me. G'day, Pete.
That's you are going badly if I'm more professional than you, mate. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Adelaide Crows Crowcast for this Tuesday night live. It's great to have you all with us. We're very, very excited, of course, as we creep ever so slightly to round one. We've got just 2 weeks to go now, we're not even. So JLT is all done, and we're happy about that. All the trial games out the way, and of course the big stuff starts fairly shortly. And with us tonight to chat about JLT 3 and all of the news from around the AFL, as well as our opening round, is of course our regular panel of Nikki, Macca and Fiend. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Not bad.
Very well, Peter.
Very, very good. And I should also mention, of course, there'll be some chat about AFL Women's as well, with the Crows just seemingly falling off a little bit of a cliff as we get towards the end of the season. But anyway, we'll turn that round and we'll get them over the line. Okay, without further ado, we will get on to Nikki's news for this week.
Well, with the JLT over, the main thing was that everybody wanted to see their team have a decent hit out, have an idea of what was coming through for their through on their team, new players that have been recruited, etc., and no injuries. Unfortunately, like there is every year, there's some injuries that are going to cause a few issues with teams, particularly at the start of the season. So you had Leuenberger for Essendon, who's now out with a couple of weeks with a hamstring. They're not too sure. There was another player who did his ankle, but they think he just rolled it, so he might be okay. Wells is a definite out. That's been confirmed for Collingwood. GWS has been hit with a couple, but I think as somebody pointed out, well, yeah, okay, they lose one of these A-grade midfielders. They just replaced him with somebody who's getting 45 touches in the NEFL and was a first-round draft pick. So you kind of get the feeling of, not so much a worry there. Sydney, who we spoke about last week, of course, with Heaney out, that was a really good game between them and St Kilda. Who else were the other injury that we had? Valentine is out for 8 to 10 weeks. And I think from what we were looking at, and we had a little bit of discussion beforehand, and now might be a good time just to have a little quick round robin as to where we think teams are going to fit within, are they going to make the 8 or not? And I'd say with Freo, when one of your best players in Ballantyne, he's out for that long, even though they've got 5 back, I can't really see them fighting for the 8. Who do you guys think are the ones who won't make it?
Well, there's two you can just write off straight away. Carlton, I think, and I know not everybody agrees with me, but I think Carlton are going to fight like hell to get bottom spot off of Brisbane. I think those two are definitely going to be the bottom ones. And I thought, Brisbane showed a little bit more than Carlton did, quite frankly. I don't know what the other people think, but I think they are, if you're going to peg the bottom two, I think they're the bottom two.
I think Essendon and Freo are going to have a fair old chance with that.
I think they make up next division. I think, Carlton, Brisbane, and then Essendon and Freo come up after that, because I think Freo are going to improve a little bit. I don't think there was a real justification for them to go quite as bad as they did last year, although losing 5 is a big loss. But I think they will definitely make some form of a comeback, and not a great one, but some form. And Essendon they'll win some matches.
Do you think, Pete? Do you actually think that Essendon, Freo and Brisbane have a slight advantage though with being interstate teams and their home grounds? That they might jag some wins there. That if they were, like, say, an Essendon playing another Melbourne club, you'd kind of always err on the side of the other Melbourne club.
Look, I think that Brisbane in particular will always topple someone at the Gabba. That happens pretty constantly. And I mean, if you're looking at it from an odds point of view, you would say that most weeks putting your money on whoever plays Brisbane or Carlton is better than bank interest. But you've just got to be very, very careful. I mean, you think of it like, I mean, I can remember last year, Brisbane playing the Sydney Swans up at the Gabba, and I mean, Sydney got over, but it was, they got home, but it was like the last kick of the day. And so they are absolutely capable. I mean, they rolled the other side they rolled up there was Gold Coast. Now, this was before Gold Coast got a lot of their injuries, and they'd actually had a pretty good start to the season, if you remember. It was they got chronic injuries last year, Gold Coast, and Brisbane rolled them up there unexpectedly, and so they will. And Freo, I think, are the same. And I think you're right, Nikki. I think there is there's a home ground advantage there that is not necessarily going. It's not going to be enough that will affect their ladder position significantly, but it is enough that they will upset somebody. And I know you never know each year who's going to cop it, but someone will, and you just want to make sure you're not that one.
Yeah, that's where my thinking is that the bottom two, I think, is actually more Essendon and Carlton. I think Brisbane are probably better equipped, and Freo still have some quality, but their defence is just lacking. And we saw last year when Lyon was trying to change the way they were playing, they weren't that responsive to it. So whether that's a group that actually learns a new style of play well, they didn't seem able to adapt to that, just from what I was watching last year. I reckon they'll be more middle.
I'm a bit more bullish on Essendon than that. They've shown a bit this pre-season, and they might run out of puff, but I think that they will.
They'll do well at the start of games, and then they fall away.
They'll be better than bottom 2 or 3. I'd be pretty confident on that. I reckon you got Carlton, Brisbane, and then a fair gap to the next lot.
Yeah, I think that's what I see those two as being sort of glued down there, and the others fluctuating above them. But I still think that Essendon will take some time to really get their act together. After having all these players out for 12 months, but maybe I'm underestimating. I don't know, but I see Essendon and Freo down there. In terms of the other teams, I think Collingwood. I'm not really sure what to quite make of Collingwood. I don't know what other people's opinions are, but
oh no, they'll be in the 8. They'll be a good side. Don't worry about Collingwood. They will be a good side. They've got Champion Data's best midfield in the competition, and they really threatened, a couple of times last year. And I think they were probably just still a little bit immature. And I reckon they'll be a very, very difficult side this year.
I think they're definitely going to improve, though. That's why I wasn't quite sure where to place them. But and you might well be right, because Champion Data did rate their midfield as the best. Gold Coast is another one, though, which I'm not quite sure.
They've been hit with injuries once again.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. So
they had a
I kind of see them as that.
Year.
Yeah, and they've now, with who is it? Who did his hip? He's out for the season.
Same day.
Yeah. I mean, they've still got some really good players there, but I think they're that little next run. So I think you've got Gold Coast. Collingwood are probably the better ones at it. Gold Coast, there's Port I put in amongst this kind of, so outside of the 8, probably will tease and they will think they're a chance, but eventually I think they won't quite make it. They just don't have the cattle, and the coaching now is kind of where I think is what's sitting in this next bunch. To me, the movers have always been the possibility of Melbourne and St Kilda. I'm a little more bullish about St Kilda actually being better chance of making the 8 than Melbourne. Melbourne have the defence down pat, but now they're trying to do the offence. And when you're switching that, my dad and I were talking about this the other week, the defence you tend to lose your shape of the defence. You're concentrating now on the offence, which is what they're doing with Goodwin. So they'll win some, but I think they'll also lose some that in future years they will win. So they're building, but they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I see St Kilda, Melbourne, two interesting teams, and both of whom will go a lot better than they did last year. And I think, wouldn't be surprised if one of them made it into the 8. And like you, Nicky, I think if one of them does, it's probably going to be St Kilda. But I think they will be big improvers for the year. I think North Melbourne are going to be a big slider. I can't see them making the 8. How do you other guys see that?
Yeah, they're one. What is it? 500 games of experience they've lost, and they do tend to kind of like grit it out. But I think this is the year that there's a lot of pressure for them to slip out. Hawthorn aren't looking as impressive as they have in previous years, which, to be fair, they've lost a lot of cattle, but they still do have Clarkson at the helm. Where do you think Hawthorn's going to be, Pete?
Look, I tend to agree that I know it's easy to say. I think they'll slide a bit. I think you just have you have to look at.
You can't write them off though.
You can't write them off. I mean, I can write them off from winning the flag. They're not going to win the flag next year, or this year, I should say. I think that you have to look at Hawthorn over the last, perhaps, probably if you look at their season last year, where they got by on so many close wins, and you think, well, how did they get those close wins? Well, it's because they had that experience, particularly around the ball. And they've lost that, and they've gone in a different direction, and that's fair enough. And really, the only person, the two that they retain are Hodge and Burgoyne, another year older, the two of them. I just think that last year was that they were just at the precipice. Last year, they could so easily have missed the 8 last year without all of those results that went in their favour. And if you go back and look at those results, it was the same guys time and again that put them in a position to win the game. So, for me, I think that you can't just expect to lose players of the calibre that they have, and also for another year to be tacked on a couple of the others, and not to have some kind of effect.
Well, I think that's an excellent summary, and I agree. I think even by the fact that Clarkson moved on, Mitchell and. What's his other name?
Lewis apparently wasn't his call. He's come out today and said under the new cap, they all could have been retained, and they're new players as well. And it wasn't his call to. The only one that kind of was Mitchell. That's something that he'd discussed with him, and it was set up because of Adam Simpson.
If he casts his memory back, he also did say earlier in the season that he actually had a discussion with Lewis, and it was open up to Lewis what he wanted to do.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting that he's now come out and talked about that today. The other one interesting is they finished 7th before the final series started, but ended up winning the premiership. Are they the team to beat this year?
Oh, no, I think actually the teams to beat this year will be up in Sydney. I think the flag will go to either GWS or Sydney this year.
Well, yeah, fair call, Becker. I think probably one of those two are no doubt favourites, and it'll be interesting to see how they start. I think, Nicky, I know this wasn't necessarily your view. That was a view I certainly read as well, and that is that with Caniglio going down, you can just rack up another A-grade midfielder from somewhere. I think there was talk of Hopper. I tend to not agree with that necessarily. I think Caniglio is a big loss for them.
He is a huge loss.
He really is one of their engine room, and he gets a lot of possessions, and he gets a lot of possessions in the guts. And I think he's a very, very significant loss for them, and he'll be gone for 6 weeks. Now, there'll be a number of games where they'll be able to cover that, but I'm not sure what their draw is. And I think that might just hurt them a bit in the first sort of quarter of the season. But yeah, hard to go past them, Macca. Hard to go past them. Maybe just a really quick summary from me both before we probably should move on to the Crows.
The other one, I think, a bit of a slider is going to be Geelong. Definitely, we've seen that they just don't have the depth there. I know we lament about our depth in our midfield, but they've lost the depth out of their backlines as well as their midfield, and that's where they excelled in previous years. It was that counter-attack. From the backlines, they would do the turnover and really just control the ball. And we've seen that in the JLT already, that they're struggling to do that.
Yeah, well, for me, the two Sydney teams, I see them up at the top level. The next level down, I see as being ourselves, along with the Bulldogs and West Coast Eagles. And I think the flag winners won't come out of anywhere below those 5 teams. We haven't mentioned Richmond, of course, who we know will fail. Well, that's a given. Ninth, you can pinch them in around that area. They'll look good at stages, but they won't be any good. Port Adelaide down the road will, I think, very quickly that they could make the 8. But
not a chance.
But I hadn't finished yet, but I don't think they will. But I have to concede it's not beyond them because they won, I think it was 9 or 10 games last year, and they've only got to win 2 or 3 more, and they did lose some close ones, so it's possible. I mean, we hope they don't, but that's another story. And
well, we really should move on. We've given quite a bit of time to that. On Sunday, of course, the JLT series came to a conclusion, and the Crows stitched up Brisbane Lions down at Wollonga very comfortably. I'm not sure that we had too many questions answered out of that. I thought that we obviously played good football in patches, and so did they. I mean, let's not forget they scored over 100 points. So Brisbane played some good football as well. But I wondered, do we have more questions asked and answered in that trial? What do we think?
I think the biggest question that needs to be answered by the club is when they're going to sign up Mitch McGovern. Above anyone else, including Jack Lever, Mitch McGovern needs to be the guy that gets signed up ASAP.
Well, 100% right, because this guy showed that he might be anything. And I remember saying at the beginning of last year to a friend of mine who didn't know much about the individual players, and I said, look, we've got a star of the future in Mitch McGovern in our side. I said, he might not make the side regularly this year, how wrong I was, but I said, I think next year you'll see this guy explode. Well, on what we saw on the last game against Brisbane, I mean, yeah, you're right. He's just got to be signed up as quickly as we can for as long as we can, because I think he is going to be one of the real stars of the competition.
Being at the ground, it was very interesting because in that first quarter, we seemed to identify very quickly that Brisbane were double-teaming Lynch and preventing him from being our lead-up player. And what that then does is we just go, okay then, we're just going to release Gov. And so if you stop Lynch, we've got Gov to replace him in that role. We've seen that if we lose Walker, he can slot into that role as well. As you said, Phoenix, he's integral to that forward line functioning because no team has defenders that can cope with Walker, with Lynch, with Betts, with Jenkins, and then McGovern.
And yeah, that's right.
That's 5 players.
The beauty of it is that they're all different, and throw Cameron for good measure, but they're just all different, and it's very hard to plan a defence around 5 to 6 different types of players.
Yeah, that's right. He could be anything, and I'm going to go early on this. I'm predicting Texas' demise within the next 2 years. I just think he's going to become a little fragile, and Mitch McGovern is going to be the future of our forward line, and if we don't sign him up on a 5-year deal, I'd rather have him on a 5-year deal than Jenkins.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you, actually, even though I know that you...
No, that's not giving shit to Jenkins. McGovern is strong overhead. He's strong at ground level. He's got good footy smarts, and defensively he's 1,000% better than Jenkins. So, on balance, despite Jenkins having a few runs on the board, on balance, you compare the two players. I know which one I'd rather have.
Yeah, although with that video of the little Chinese girl saying, "Why not both?"
Well, that's right, but I mean,
Mexican.
If you're going to give Jenkins 5 years, then by God, you throw the kitchen sink at McGovern, I reckon.
Yep, I can't argue with you. We must keep him.
I have to say though, being at the game, it was a toss-up between Sauce, Talia, and Eddie as to which one of them had the terrible, horrible, no good, bad day. It was just atrocious for the three of them. They just could not. Nothing was going right for any of them.
Worst game I've seen Talia play for a long time.
I think it brings up what I was discussing before, Nicky, and that is that yes, the forward line, there was some great signs from the forward players, and we all know that's our strong third. There's no question about that. And if you're ranking our thirds, then you've obviously got the forward line, the defence, and the midfield. And even and probably rather than being sort of equal second, they're equal third, if that makes sense. The defence and the mids, and there were just occasions on the weekend when Brisbane just really tore us apart and just scored at will easily, and it was almost as though we really were only in that game because we can just kick more goals than they can. I know that sounds silly, but I think you probably know what I'm trying to say. The defensive action was poor. The midfield again was, average at best. And, they're going to be a bottom 2 or 3 side this year, and we really couldn't just get rid of them. And that might have been to do with Nicky, and you would know this better than, if me not being at the ground. But, maybe it was rotations, maybe we were resting players. I'm not really sure. But to me, there was a lot of issues which came out of that win for me.
We had a really junior midfield a lot of the time. There was a lot of rotations through there. They were playing a lot of, I think, Pike. That earlier on in the game, it was kind of obvious that first quarter that we just controlled it. And so I think once it became obvious, it's like, okay, now we're just going to try a few things. We're going to do a few different looks and setups. I was really pleased to see a lot of those younger ones going through the midfield. You actually even had McGovern on a wing at one stage. Atkins was in the centre. Miller was in the centre. Charlie was in the centre.
But who have we got to add to that for round one? Who's adding to that junior midfield in round one?
Well, we got Rory Sloane for a start.
Yeah.
Well, we think. But that's one.
No, he's but look, a lot of people have been down on Hampton, but just watching him at the ground and how hard he was working, I'm fully sold. He is going to make it on that.
Oh yeah, he was good. I mean, I thought he had a decent game, and I mean he'll play round one. I don't think there's any question about that.
Douglas actually played really well.
I thought Douglas played a beauty
game. But what I'm concerned about, Nick, is you're talking about a young midfield. I just don't think that I'm worried at looking at that setup on the weekend. I'm just not sure. I mean, apart from Slaney, who else there is to add to that in the short term, for round 1, 2, and 3?
Well, you've got Matt Crouch, who's in there already.
Yeah, but he was there.
He was there.
I'm talking about. Do we have what you're saying is that we had this very, very young midfield, and clearly it was probably at best broke even with Brisbane, who are going to be a bottom 3 team. What I'm saying is that round 1, 2 weeks time we got GWS, and I'm just wondering, is that going to be the midfield we go with plus Sloane?
Yeah, but
pretty much.
No, but it's going to continue to rotate. I can see it's going the way of like what the Bulldogs did and Phoenix talked about last week. Is that you're getting a lot?
Yeah,
well, there you go.
Yeah, steal my thunder now.
Sorry, but it was a really good point. is that you've got a lot of different looks going through there. Now, we even had when we had Greenwood in there, Brisbane just didn't quite know what to do with him. They concentrated so much on him because he's such a tall man and such a strong body. And I've seen reports from other people going, oh, he was okay. And it's like, you needed to be at the ground to see the blocks and the hits and the tackles and those little bumps and everything else that he was doing. And when he did get his hands on the ball, he disposed of it quite well. I mean, his first possession was takes the ball in midair and handballs it before he's even landed. It's hit the target and we're off and running. Commentators are too busy talking about how good Brisbane are going to be. They completely ignore that this has happened in the first quarter. So others said,
I like Hughes' game. I thought he had a nice game. I mean, probably a different point, but I wonder whether it just looked to me, watching on TV, I wonder whether he's competing, if they're going to move Cameron up the ground, and I wonder whether he was competing with Menzel for that role, because quite clearly Greenwood at stages was stationed in the forward line and was there to put in big hits and big tackles, which he did to very, very good effect. And so he looked to me like he was rotating with a bit of time in the midfield and also up forward as being that pressuring, tackling player. And so I wonder whether he may have been competing for the vacant Cameron spot with Menzel. Does that make sense?
No, when he was up forward, he was relieving McGovern or Lynch.
But why are we talking about Greenwood? He's not available. So...
Well, if he's upgraded...
Maybe.
Yeah, no, but have we got room to upgrade?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I can't see him being upgraded just yet.
Pete, I got distracted, but I just wanted to make mention because I thought he had a good game. But
yeah, he
Pete,
did.
You tell me about the midfield, because I reckon there was nothing that I saw on the weekend which makes me feel any better at all about round one against GWS.
No, it's exactly as you point out. There's not a lot to come back in. Sloaney obviously adds some strength and a certain amount of class, but there's not a lot to come back in, and there's not a lot to be excited about. Dane Beams racked up getting the ball. I thought Brisbane's midfield probably edged us on the day. They certainly ran harder both ways than we did.
Yeah, they got a good
Except
midfield
in the third quarter.
But I don't think it's good. I think we're going to, as I was saying to Nicky and Macca after the cast last week, I think we're going to rotate a cast of thousands through there, Pete. I think we're going to have 3 or 4 mainstays in there: Crouch, Douglas, Sloan, Hampton,
Atkins,
possibly Atkins. But then I think we're just going to rotate the hell out of the rest of it to try and maintain at least freshness in the midfield and rely on our bookends to do the job. I think I can't see any other way that we can play the game, because if we try and match up in the midfield, we'll get smashed.
No, you're right. You're 100% right, Phoenix.
And on the defence, apart from Talia just having that atrocious day, I thought the rest of them actually held up really well, and I was really pleased to see Jack Kelly's game and the fact that he's getting some kudos for his performances.
Must be in the starting side. Has to be.
Well, if Cheney's out, he's likely. The problem with Kelly, and I think the reason why Talia got a little bit exposed, how often last year did you see Talia as our last player in defence? It was never Talia. There was always someone scouting behind, whether it was Cheney or Luke Brown or someone like that. And
Good point.
Often our defence was either playing high or were following Brisbane's forwards who were playing high, which is, I think, probably more likely. And as a consequence, they were isolating Talia one out very deep. And I don't think that during the season we're going to see that sort of a setup too often. I'm not too concerned about Tales. He's got his strengths and weaknesses, but that's why it's important that if Jake Kelly does come in, he needs to be able to fill that role where he almost quarterbacks the defence, because Talia needs that cover behind him. And if Jake does play and doesn't read the play as well as Cheney often does, and to a lesser degree Luke Brown, then we might get exposed similarly to what we did on the weekend.
Yeah, what Brisbane did, you're quite right. They had their forwards up high, and they were at one stage they had Hislop isolated with Talia, and Hislop is a speed machine by comparison to Talia, and that was the problem. That if the ball went over the back, which they did 2 or 3 times, and Hislop was just too quick, and that I remember watching Talia chasing one, and you could look on his face was, "What am I doing here?"
Oh, that was the one where he actually led Hislop to the ball. He read the play better, and the bounce was just absolutely atrocious for him.
That's the one, yeah.
And it was just like, he chased, but you could just kind of tell that it was, I've got no chance. This is not my day. No matter what I'm doing, it's just not my day.
If you replay and look at his face is really saying, "Why am I here?"
So who do you pick out of Otten and Jake Kelly? Because I think there's going to be that one spot available. Otten offers us more in the air, although I think sometimes Andy needs to actually stay down more than go for everything. But he does offer us more in the air. But Jake Kelly probably offers us a little bit more ground level, and neither of them are offensive players, offensively minded players, but Kelly probably gives us an outlet pass better than Otten. Would that be a fair comparison?
Yeah, and the other thing that Andy Otten, he's played very well through the series, but if there is a criticism of Andy's game, he goes to ground quite a bit, and whereas Jake Kelly keeps his feet a lot better. And like 2 or 3 times we've been called out where Andy has gone to ground, and as you know, he's not a speedster either. But I think they've both had good seasons. But I think that for me, it's Jake Kelly. I think because for the very reason you said, he's a lot more versatile. He can do it better on that ground level, and probably nearly as good at that up in the air.
I have to agree with Vlahos that in defence it does tend to depend a bit more on matchup. So it's who are we playing and who actually works better matching up on their forwards.
But not in this case, Nick, because whoever comes in is going to be playing the Jake Lever role / Kyle Chaney role, and that's very much a quarterback role. He's got to obviously be able to match
on the
up.
man.
But he's got to be able to peel off, and he's got to be able to read the play appropriately, and he's got to, be that anchor. Because, as we saw on the weekend, like I said earlier, if Tars does get exposed deep, if teams do push up high and try and get us over the back, which is likely to happen given that we're going to get done on defensive transition through the mids quite often, we need a bloke like that who can peel off and provide cover behind Talia. I think Andy Otten's probably that guy more so than Jake Kelly, to be honest with you.
Well, Andy's got that experience and will do it a lot more naturally, I suppose. But I think Andy is a relief for Lever, and Kelly is a relief more for Cheney. And if Cheney doesn't play, well, then to me it's definitely Kelly that comes in, because Lever is much more likely to play than Cheney.
What do you reckon, Pete?
I think that's a fair comment, Mecca. I don't see them competing for the same spot. I think that the like for like of Otten and Lever and the like for like of Kelly and Cheney stands out to me, and so it just depends on the two A graders as to what their fitness is like, and whether it would seem to me to be counterproductive just to rush them straight back into the side for round one. I don't think that we'll take. I think we'll take a longer term view and get them ready for maybe round 2 or 3, depending on how bad their injuries are. But I don't think they'll be rushed straight back in. So I could see both Otten and Kelly playing in round one.
The problem we have.
Go on, Nikki.
Yeah, just quickly, the problem we have, though, is bringing people back, is the SANFL has a late start. So there's only a couple of trial games. And that's that's going to be a bit of an issue with players coming back at that time to try and get them match fitness when normally we would bring them into the SANFL. But is there the opportunity for them?
Yeah, but I don't know whether so much the match fitness with Lever. It's coming back from a hamstring, and it's the risk factor of redoing your hammy, and if it depends how solid his hamstring is at the moment. If they think his hammy is 100%, I think they'll play him. But if they think there's any chance whatsoever of redoing it, then I think they'll just wait the extra week.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think against a fast team like GWS, it would be insanity to play. And it would just be silly to try that and then losing for another 3 or 4 weeks. I can't see them taking that route at all.
Oh, I just remembered who else is going in the midfield. Laird.
Who?
Lairdy.
Yeah, that doesn't spell premiership to me, Nick. Sorry. Love Lairdy as a player, but...
He did have 4 clearances, I think.
The interesting thing was Pikey actually talking about him doing that and saying what an intelligent footballer he was and just trying to get as many minutes in the JLT into him in the midfield because he needs to change his running patterns because running patterns as a midfielder is vastly different from running patterns as a defender, which I thought was quite interesting. That Pike was actually releasing like a bit of information like that out there.
Well, Lairdy played a bit of midfield at Westie's underage.
Yeah, he did say that.
But it was pointed out quite rightly that, those running patterns are extremely different. And Andy Collins certainly didn't run a midfield like Don Pike does. So, I mean, it probably backs up my thinking that we're going to rotate everyone but the goal umpire through our midfield this year. And Rory Laird's part of that, so he'll probably get minutes, but doesn't necessarily inspire me that much.
No, look, and I do hope we do something about it at the end of this year, that if we can recruit a gun midfielder from somewhere else, because it would be very, very nice, or if Brad Crouch can finally become the midfielder that he allegedly is, which we never seem to get the opportunity to see.
Yeah, I won't hold my breath.
There's still 4 weeks before we see Brad Crouch back anyway.
I know.
He's out of the equation.
No, that's the problem. And he's allegedly the best midfielder we've got, but we never get to see it.
Well, he's not. It doesn't matter who says that now. He's not. He's far down the pecking order. His brother's better. Ratkins is better. Curtly Hampton's probably giving us more output at the moment than Brad Crouch did last year. Brad's got some work to do, no doubt about it. And, I can't see him breaking in before about round 4 or 5. And I'm just as pessimistic as you are, Pete, regarding Brad's output.
Yeah, well, it's hard to argue against that because we just haven't seen it.
No, we haven't seen anything for, 3 years now.
Is it 3 or 2?
He played half a year last year, but I wasn't particularly impressed with his half a year.
No, that's
but anyway, I'm probably being harsh, but
Oh no. I agree with you. I thought he was only just present last year.
Yeah, he did good defensive stuff last year in close, but he didn't give us anything. There was no hurt factor with him. That I don't think opposition midfield would have been terribly worried about Brad Crouch being around the ball.
One thing I do want to mention about his brother Matty, though, Phoenix, and you quite rightly point out, to finish his game off properly, he's got to learn to find somebody when he's got the ball and when he kicks it. And I think he must have heard you because he's starting to do it. He really is. Some of his passes have been very good.
Yep, I agree. I actually liked what I saw from Matt in both JLT 2 and 3. He's getting the ball forward on the boot a little bit more in their I think the problem with Matt is that in the past he's been slightly indecisive with his kicking, and as a consequence, it's neither a bullet nor a booming towering kick. It's kind of just a floaty little thing up the top, a little speculative thing. And hopefully Matt's got a bit more confidence and been given a bit more licence to use his foot aggressively this year, because his footwork this year has been far better so far. Whether he can maintain that and improve it in the under the pump of the main event, let's wait and see. But it is promising.
To me, it just seemed like there's a switch has gone on into his head that this is what you need to do to take the next step, and he's not hesitating. We haven't seen that in the JLT. There was, I've got the ball, and this is where it's going.
Another player who's definitely going to go up a notch this year, and that's Atkins, your man, Pete. He is definitely...
God, he was good.
Yeah, he's going to go up to another level. I think by the end of this year, he could be recognised as a gun right throughout the whole of the AFL, because he's really coming along beautifully at the moment.
That mark in the first quarter that he had absolutely no right to take. And I saw him come steaming in and just thought he was going to punch it. But he obviously just looked at it and went, I've got this. And he just went for that mark. He had no right to take it. And it was just superb.
Yeah,
and it just set the tone for the rest of the game.
What we need from Atkins, and I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, is that he's now had 30, 40-odd games invested into him. And we're seeing that he's probably more comfortable now at the level. And so what we need to see from Atkins now is the output of a player who is safe in the 22, who's considered an A-grade midfielder with the club, or within the club. And so that we now need to see output of performance that's reflective of that status, so that each and every week you're relying on him to be getting his 25 possessions a game and a goal sort of here or there, and that level of output that that a reliable A-grade midfielder is expected to put on the field every week. So that's Rory's challenge, and also he still needs to tidy up his disposal a bit. His decision making is still first class, but his disposal is still not as great. Sometimes the mind is more creative than what the body can execute, and so he's just got to get that under control a little bit. But other than that, no, tracking really, really well, and but he's at that next level now. He's not speculative anymore. He's part of the midfield, and so he must take that responsibility.
Yep. I think Atkins' challenge also, sorry, Macca, to interrupt, is when he starts being pointed out by opposition coaches and starts getting a little bit more attention. If he's recognised, and given our thin stocks in the midfield, if he starts racking them up, then he's going to get pinpointed fairly quickly. And to see whether he's got the temperament and the composure under that sort of pressure is going to be interesting to watch.
Oh, look, I just really like what he's doing this year, because my one criticism of him last year was I thought he wasn't quite hard enough, and I cannot make that criticism of him this year. I think he's just doing everything that you could ask of a young lad of his age. The other guy I was going to mention, Menzel. I was a little bit more pleased with his effort this week. I thought I could actually see the guy was actually putting in and trying, and I don't think he's quite there yet, but I did think we got a bit more out of him this week.
Really?
He was running hard well into that last quarter. So, and he was in the. We did push him up to the wing a little bit, like Pete and I have seen him last year. That happened every so often in the SANFL as well, and he was pushing deep into defence if he needed to. That great little walk and everything else when he just kicked to the wrong side of the post in the third quarter, it was like, damn it. But you could just see that there's that little bit of there's that talent that we know he possesses, and just starting to go. But I was really pleased with his running patterns and the effort that he was doing at the ground. It's good that it actually did show up on TV, because I know that's something that he's always been quite defensively minded.
Does he make the best 22 or not?
Not even close.
Teague was talking him up, though.
How does he make
Teague
the
wants
best?
him in there.
To do what? Well, I mean, I accept that he ran around a lot, then that's great. So did the boundary umpires, as I said last week. But
Excuse me, we got 2 goals 1 out of him. Was it 2 goals 1 or 1 goal 2?
He kicked one goal.
Should have had 2.
Well, he should have had 2 because Hugh Greenwood set him up with a magnificent tackle, and Hugh would have had a shot for goal from about 20 metres out, but Menzel took the advantage and then proceeded to kick a point. But anyway,
it was a very tight angle.
Other than that, I understand that we want him to do well. I understand that it's like when you're watching your kid play footy. You want him to do well. You want him, and you come home and Mum says, "Oh, how'd he go today?" And, "Oh, yeah, he got a couple of kicks and he did a handball and so he's coming on really well and this is a number 11 draft pick and when we paid a second rounder for him. This is not some kind of speculative pick 81 as Atkins was and anything that you get from him is a bonus. I'm sorry, but I mean, what is that? I mean, when our expectations are so low of a player who has such credentials, I'm sorry, but I'm a bit speechless.
Right. Here's a question, Pete. Walker, Lynch, Jenkins, Betts, McGovern in the forward line. How do they play the entire game in the forward line, or do we have to have other players of quality coming in?
Of quality is the key point there, Nikki. You don't play Menzel just because he might. I'm sorry, but he hardly got a sniff. He got 8 touches or something like that, 10 touches maybe. Like D-Mac did better than he did. Let's be honest. Menzel, until Menzel can show something at SANFL, doesn't matter. Until Menzel can show something at SANFL level, and that means with his talent, and as Pete rightly points out, the fact that he was so highly rated, he needs to be able to dominate a couple of games at SANFL level, and until he does that, he's not ready. And I didn't see anything on the weekend to suggest that he'd taken the next step. I'm with you 100%. His work rate is fantastic. His defensive efforts are very good, and his attitude is certainly right, as we pointed out last week. But that doesn't. It's not a coaches award team. If he's not giving us the output that we need, then there's no room for him. We're going to struggle enough without being able to carry blokes, and we can't carry Menzel.
We had a discussion last week about what do we expect from him. Now, did he meet those expectations this week? I don't think he did.
No, of course not.
Well, I asked the question because I thought he was better than last week, but still not good enough. That was my summary of it. And if he isn't good enough, and if we do play Cameron on the wing, who is the other forward? Is it Miller?
Well, it's probably Miller. And Miller needs to pull his finger out as well. He does some nice little things and he flashes in and out of games, but he's part of the team and he needs to realise that he needs to get more of the ball.
I agree with that. Yeah, look, that's my only one criticism of Miller, because he's a guy with amazing skills and amazing balance, but he's got to be in the game all the time, not flashing in and out of it at, like 5-10 minute intervals.
Yep, he seems to blow up too quickly, so he obviously hasn't got the engine right yet. He's certainly good when it's on his terms and he's got the run of the play and he can move about a bit, but he needs to be in the contest more often for longer.
I see that some of the critics in Big Footy were very critical of Hampton's kicking this week, but they, overlooking the fact that he had one of the weeks was 90-something%, I think. He did have a poor week by his standards with his kicking. But what I love about Hampton is the fact that while he can be flashy, he's tough as well. He goes in very hard for the ball, and he makes second and third and fourth efforts. I just think that he's going to be very, very good for us.
Yeah, I agree. And I wasn't concerned too much about his disposal efficiency, given the role that he was playing, where he was very much on the inside of the midfielder. He was in and around the clearances. I think he won 7 clearances or something like that. And so he was what he needed to be, and that was a big body at the contest, and getting the ball forward for us. And I think under those circumstances, I think you can be a little bit harsh. Generally speaking, not anyone here, but generally speaking, people can be a bit harsh on disposal efficiency when you've got a guy that's in running around through traffic like that. I thought he was very, very good, and for me, he's an absolute lock. And I should, at that point, you're talking about Hampton and Nikki. I think we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I might have bit your head off about saying that Kirtley Hampton wasn't necessarily a surprise to anybody. And I think we're having that discussion, and interesting that. Listening to the commentators on the weekend, virtually every time he gets near the ball, they talk about his, being, coming from GWS, and so you probably have to concede that one to you, Nikki. And I think you were right there that everyone knows him and knows of him from GWS, and maybe not as much of a surprise as someone like McGovern was last year.
No surprise to me, because before we even went after him, I was. Suggesting Hampton as a target for us to chase, because GWS is so strong in its midfield that he couldn't even get a sniff over there, and he was used as a half-back flanker, which is slightly out of position for him. But I could see that the guy had a lot of talent, and I thought, well, we could get hold of him. And I think, Pete, you are right. It shows what you can get for a second rounder when you're in Hampton, compared to what we're getting out of Menzel for a second rounder.
Very true. All right, should probably wrap that up as time creeps on. We've still got a few things to get through, and we had a bit of a misfire last week with a new segment for Macca, and we'll see if we can get it right this week.
Yeah, well, he doesn't get the bloody music.
Doesn't get the music this week.
No,
All right, have your spray anyway, mate.
Oh, you don't want to hum at the background there?
No, not really.
Okay, well, okay.
You're not humming from us.
Well, my big beef this week has got to be with the AFL and the gut punches, the sneaky little punches behind play in the stomach, and the $1,000 fines. And these guys are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a $1,000 fine is it's morning tea money to them. And all the AFL is doing is guaranteeing that we're going to see another season of these dirty little sneaky punches, which I absolutely detest, because most of them are cowardly hits when the other player is not looking, and that's just not on. And then really, if they hit them with $10,000 or they gave them matches, they'd soon bloody well stop.
Keep talking.
Well,
He's enjoying it.
He wanted the background music, so go for it.
yeah. Well, it's a little bit hard to talk over that. And this is a bloody lunatic asylum. But coming back to what I was saying, that's my beef for this week. AFL, get a set of knackers, do something about it. Don't treat this thing as if it's a game, just a little toy game, when these guys do their sneaky little gut punches. I remember this, I saw Hartlett do a dirty round punch in somebody's guts when they weren't looking, and he's a serial offender, and he gets $1,000 fine too. So not on, just not on. AFL, you are weak. You really are weak. And I think, Pete, you've got a bit of a beef too.
Oh, just a really quick one, Mac. I just really, you're just embarrassing behaviour of adults who we are expecting to run junior sport, and I'm going to give an absolute brickbat to a club they are a major sporting club in this city, and they had two teams. The club had both teams that were in a grand final of a junior cricket association last weekend. They played week 1. And of course, last weekend it was washed out. Last Sunday was washed out because of a very poor weather day, as you'll recall. And the rules in junior cricket allow for the rescheduling of that day's play upon agreement. It said they say it may be rescheduled, and the coaches agree. Well, these two coaches that came from the one club, the coach of the team that finished higher refused to reschedule the game and just entered the score as an abandoned match. And because his team finished first at the end of the minor round, his team wins through and wins the flag. Now, two things here. The coaches, the most appalling behaviour I have seen from a junior coach in many, many years of watching junior sport, and also massive criticism on the club. And anyone that is listening to this, they'll know who the club is. And that a club president couldn't get these two idiots together to reschedule a game so the group of under 11 kids could have a game of cricket and decide their grand final. I just think that what the hell is going on at your sporting organisation? You're an absolute bloody disgrace. That's my spray for the night.
Big spray. Virat Kohli spray.
Sorry, it wasn't football, but I just think that junior sport has a bad reputation, and when those kinds of things happen, it just reinforces the fact that adults just destroy sport for young kids, and that's certainly what's happened on that occasion.
Pete, who was the club?
Sorry,
who was the club? It's the results are in the paper, so who was the club?
Walkerville.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
So there you go.
Well, as I always say about junior sport, the only problem with the players is they've got parents.
Yep, that's exactly right.
That's exactly right. All right, that's my spray.
And just quickly, as somebody who actually used to coach younger athletes, for something like that to happen is you're not being a proper coach. That you're doing a huge disservice to the athletes under your care.
Yeah, the idea is to teach them about how to play the game and the spirit of playing the game, not to win at all costs at that particular level. But anyhow, I support your beef there, Pete. I think somebody ought to grow up there and realise that it's not all about him.
And my beef is the
Hang on, wait a minute. Since when do we all get a beef?
Well, I thought this is a nice way to flow on to just talking quickly about Crows women's team and their stuff up.
Go on then.
For 2 weeks in a row, they've been tentative. They've waited for the other team to get the ball. When they pick up the ball and they go to kick it, and we know we've got some really nice long kicks there, they don't kick it to the advantage of our leading player. How many times we've seen in the last 2 weeks, just balls being kicked continually over in the head of our forwards? It's just frustrating. And it just seemed really obvious to me watching that, particularly our Northern Territory girls were so nervous up there.
Yeah, they were very disappointed, the Northern Territory girls. I was amazed. I thought that they might have performed in front of their local crowd, but I thought in particular they didn't perform. Yeah,
it kind of went the other direction. And so it's building up to a very interesting final round. So Freo can do us a huge, huge chance and actually knock off Melbourne, but that's at Casey Fields. So that will be a bit of an issue. And
yeah, but Nikki, I think the most important thing is this, is that the rest of the team, apart from Chelsea Randall, apart from Aaron Phillip, apart from my big centre half forward, I'm not going to say anything more than that.
Forward.
Yep, and you know what I mean. And apart from the winger who gets more than her share, and Valhagen, yep, those five, they can hold, and the full-back didn't do a bad job either. They all really tried their guts out. Now, some of the others, you were pathetic. You really were pathetic. You ran around and like tittering little idiots doing nothing, doing absolutely nothing, and leaving it to those players to bust their guts. And, you know, I've praised the team up many, many times, but there wasn't a team out there for the last two games. In the last couple of minutes of the game, all of a sudden we saw a team, and all of a sudden it could do something. But look, you let your teammates down, and it's about time. When you play the next game, you're playing for a grand final. At least turn up and play.
We know they can do it.
That's two knifings, Macca.
I'm really quite serious about this one because that was going to be my original one. I got waylaid with the other one, but that was going to be my original one, and I really am dirty on some of those girls who. If you watch a replay of it, you'll be surprised how little effort some of those girls put in.
Maybe hitting a brick wall? What do you reckon?
Might well be that, but okay, so you buggered. Try. At least try.
Yep, I agree, but I didn't see the game, so I can't really make a comment on the women's game this week, but I was very disappointed to see that they lost up there.
You watch somebody like Marinoff. Marinoff has the highest number of tackles for our team and usually the highest number of disposals. She just keeps going like a bloody robot. And, and then there are others there that they'd be lucky if they had touched the ball twice in the game.
Oh, well, so it all comes down to next week then, doesn't it?
It does. We have to beat Collingwood over there. We hope Freo can beat Melbourne because that takes them out. And Carlton, who are on 12 points, could come up to 16, but they'd have to beat Brisbane to do so. So that's probably unlikely. But whether Brisbane actually will rest Frederick Traub, because she is actually injured, and they may rest her for that game. There could be a chance.
There could be, this is the problem with this format where the top two just play off. Because Brisbane really have the opportunity to pick their finalists to some degree. And they play last. Yeah, so I wonder if there's any directives coming from AFLW House to ensure that they give their final match the respect it deserves.
I think there's been talk that they've already mooted it will change for next year. It'll be a top four.
It should be, yeah. I don't think you can... I mean, again, I think that we were talking about how the AFL's been caught out a bit by the AFLW this year. I think that's another example is the final format. So, but I mean, given it was thrown together very quickly and who knew what to expect... And it's only 8 games. Yeah, no one knew what to expect, so we'll all be better for the season.
And there'll probably be more teams next year. No. That's right, that's the year after, isn't it?
I think they'll leave it this way for another 2 years.
Yeah, I reckon.
No, they have stated that there won't be any more teams next year, but there will be the year after.
Why would you want more teams, Macca?
You don't have the base yet.
I wouldn't, but a lot of it's the Victorian team squawking that they want a team too.
Yeah, we're going to spread it too thin, like Nikki said, I reckon, if we go too hard too early on that one.
Yes, and Fighting Magic has a really important point. They need to bring back the time on. Time on,
yeah. We talked about that last week too. Yeah, definitely. I think it's been a really good exercise, not only for the competition, but also for the AFL public and also the players, and I think everyone will sit back at the end of it and pick the eyes out of it, and it'll come back in a far more palatable format next year, I believe. I wouldn't mind betting that we actually get a few more games next year. They might get
a few more what?
Games. A few more rounds. I reckon they might go 12 rounds.
They'll extend that out. And the other thing is, just quickly, even though it's pre-season, we normally don't do cock wobbling numbnut of the week. But in terms of the AFLW, I do have to go and give it to Cotton On, who has created an entire line of clothing for the women where the only item that has pockets in it is their vest. There's no pockets in anything else.
We can have an impromptu cock womble for you, Nikki.
Underground
Anyway, you were saying?
So basically, if you are female, if you've ever had to buy clothes, particularly pants or shorts, and you discover that they don't, it's very common for there to be absolutely no pockets. Us females have been kind of held back. We're not allowed to have pockets for years. All our clothing's not designed for it. And for Cotton on to bloody do it as well. When the boys
Are you listening to this, Macca?
their training shorts, they get pockets. It's very annoying.
Are you taking this in, mate?
I was asleep when she started.
Just
thought I'd get that out there. It was International Women's Day last week anyhow.
I thought it was... Wasn't it... I always thought it was Steak and BJ Day today. Isn't it Steak and BJ Day today on the 14th of March? You know what that is, don't you, Nikki?
I don't dare ask what the BJ is.
Come on, Macca. You know what the BJ is. Mrs. Macca will tell you. Isn't it like Valentine's Day is the 14th of February?
Yes.
14th of March is Steak and BJ Day, surely.
I'll take it.
Anyway, all right. That's going to wrap us up because Pete's gone. He got called away to a secret mission. And we got nothing left to talk about. And
fair enough.
Yeah, so that wraps up our pre-season Crowcast. It's been a bit of a rabble, but it's good to dust the cobwebs off, and we thank the people that have been with us from the beginning of the season. Next week, of course, is the bye for everybody bar the AFLW. So we will be back next week previewing the 2017 season, taking a look in far more detail at what lies ahead, and then obviously moving on to the season proper the following week, which will include our full complement of shows, the preview show on Thursday night, the wrap show on the Sunday night, and the Tuesday night live as per usual. So for next week, it'll be our season preview show, and then onwards and upwards for the season. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, AFL Crowcast. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, AFL Crowcast. And we will see you guys next week. See you, Macca. See you, Nikki.
Okay. Night all.
Yeah.
Whoops. There you go.